Hello, mamas, and welcome back to episode 4 in our Own Your Birth series. Today, we are talking all about processing birth trauma. Enjoy.
Hey, mama, I'm sending you wonderful pregnancy vibes. It's time for you to guide you through. Let's take some time for you. It's pregnancy with Physio Laura.
Hello, mamas, and welcome back to episode 4 in our Own Your Birth series with the wonderful Eleanor, who is known as Eleanor.Lambert.doula on Instagram. She is a wonderful women's health physio and doula. And today we are talking about, as always, it's going to be a sensitive topic. So please, I assume if you're pressing on this podcast and you're listening to it, it's because you're ready to hear it. But we're talking about birth trauma. If you're not ready to hear it, I assume you probably haven't landed here. So please use your discernment if you're ready to listen to this. We know that birth trauma is way too prevalent at the moment. So we know that it is affecting a lot of women. And I wanted to put this episode out there because I think it's important to validate women, to help them understand that it's okay if they've had birth trauma, to help them understand that it doesn't have to just be that baby is healthy and mum is healthy and they need to suck the rest up. I think it's really important to validate that trauma is to the individual. And I know that Eleanor does a lot of work with women postpartum to debrief their births, to validate their experience and help them process any emotions that they may be feeling around birth. So maybe you don't resonate with the word trauma. Maybe that feels too strong of an emotion for you, and that's okay. But maybe you also didn't feel like your birth went to plan, or maybe it didn't go well, or maybe you're confused about something. Maybe there's elements that you want to talk to someone about. I think a birth debrief should really be offered to all women. I think it's so important to debrief what happened, because whether it's good, bad, ugly, whatever, it's a big, monumental, transformative moment in your life. And I do think it is really healthy to just process that, talk about it, let it all out, whether it's to a family member, a friend, a doula, your obstetrician, your midwife, your GP, a psychologist, whoever it is. I do think some sort of debrief is really, really important. So I really hope that you get a lot out of today's episode. If you do need any further help, Eleanor does share some resources that you can go and follow up with, like PANDA. Obviously, you can go talk to your GP or your midwife or your local hospital where you birthed at, and they will also have some amazing resources that you can follow up with. Or if you need help, come and jump in my inbox at Physio Laura. Let me know what's going on for you. Let me see if I can point you in the right direction. I think, this is a really heavy, sensitive topic, but also one that I don't think that we can skirt around because too many women are affected by it. So I really hope that you get a lot out of today's episode in terms of how to seek help, how to move through any experience that doesn't feel like it was anything but great. So I really hope you enjoy this episode. Come and jump over at Physio Laura and let me know if you have any follow-up questions. I would so love to answer them. But without further ado, let's jump in and chat with Eleanor all about how to best process birth trauma. I want to talk to you about birth trauma because I think this is a really, really important topic to speak about. We know that 30% of women are reporting birth trauma, which means that the stats are much higher than that. It's just that we're not speaking about it. And I did a poll on my Instagram yesterday asking women how would they describe their birth experience. Would they describe it? I just gave the options of positive, negative, and neutral. And I was pleased to see 62% said positive, which I thought was
really
amazing.
good.
However, that means that 40% described it as negative or neutral, which I think is really alarming. And I can't remember the exact breakdown. It was maybe like 15% negative, 35 or 25 neutral. But regardless, that means they didn't have a positive experience.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't call it traumatic, but it was neutral regardless.
Yeah.
And so we know it's super common. And so I know you do this as part of your work as well, but I wanted to talk to you about the importance of validating someone who maybe hasn't had a positive birth experience and maybe the steps they could take to debrief their birth or to work through the traumas that they feel like they may have faced. So could you talk a little bit about the work that you do with women?
Yeah, definitely. I don't plan a lot of my sessions. So even with birth education or VBAC prep or birth debriefing, I don't really go in with a structure, because everyone's an individual. Said that a lot today. Everyone's experience is so very different. But I think when I'm doing a birth debrief, I essentially just ask them to tell me their story. And, how was your birth experience? And I can get a lot from that in language and tone and what they mention and what they don't mention, and whether they use humor or they edit themselves or they downplay. Like, I just go, well, like, tell me what was your experience, and how have you walked away from it? And then the next thing is really just walking through it and going, okay, well, what aspects do you feel unhappy about, or what aspects do you find difficult to think about, or can we identify the pressure points in that experience where, and some women will go, oh, it was going really well until X, or I felt really good, but then afterwards people didn't explain things to me. So I really encourage the person I'm talking to you to think about it and go, like, well, where is it that you feel that disconnect? And then a lot of the work is just really going through that disconnect and validating them and going, oh, I can really understand how that might have left you feeling really vulnerable or coerced or pushed into things. And unfortunately, a lot of the time women blame themselves. Quite often women that have birth trauma or negative birth experiences, they walk away going, oh, I know I shouldn't have had expectations, or I should have spoken up, or it's my fault. And a lot of the work that I do is kind of just pulling them up on that and going, it's not your fault. And there were multiple occasions where this staff member could have done things differently, and actually, that sounds like they didn't get consent for that. Or so a lot of it's really just doing that active listening, and then reflecting things back to them that I hear and going, it sounds like you're saying this. And quite often it's as simple as having someone listen, but consciously reflect back to them, and then they go, I'd never thought about it that way. But the big thing is the validation. The big thing is, it's not your fault. I understand why you feel that way. And yeah, that sounds really, really difficult. And it's no surprise that you've had trouble dealing with this. And just supporting them in that grief, and supporting them in, it's okay that your baby's here and you're still unhappy with your birth experience. You don't, like, the whole, at least you have a happy baby trope is just, and validating that with them and saying, like, you can love your baby and you can not have a really good attachment to your baby. It doesn't make you a bad parent. You can love your baby and you can be grateful that they're here, but that doesn't have to minimize or negate that experience that you had. And they can exist at the same time. It doesn't mean that you've done something wrong or that your baby's healthy, so you should ignore that experience.
I feel like so many women bypass their experience because someone else has it worse, or because, like,
oh my God,
you're a healthy mom. And when I did this poll yesterday, I had more than one woman write into me to say, I feel like I had a negative birth experience, but I don't feel like I can share that with anyone because my baby is fine and I am fine. So therefore, what have I got to complain about? Or I just broke my heart, because I know that's the case for so many women, but to actually, like, have it in a message and have someone hurting over not being able to express how they feel. But then also, interestingly, I had one woman write in and say, is it weird, but I had a really positive birth experience, even though I had postpartum hemorrhage, all these interventions. It got a bit hectic afterwards, a bit of an emergency. She goes, I actually feel really strange and like a bit shameful expressing my positive experience, because on paper it doesn't look so positive. So I guess it happens in both ends of the spectrum. But the point is, all women should feel safe and comfortable to express however it is that they're feeling, without shame or judgment. And I agree, the healthy baby thing is just not at all. Actually, I got another message. There were so many messages. The lady said something along the lines of, but if we have a healthy baby, shouldn't that be enough? Are we all just overthinking it? And she came from a really lovely place. She said,
Yeah.
just my thoughts. Like, she wasn't, she was just saying, like, and I believe that that's probably how. And you know what? Maybe for her, that's great, because maybe she'll never feel traumatized, because to her, a healthy baby is the only outcome she's achieving. But I didn't even know where to start with my response, because I'm like, birth means so much more than that to so many women. And maybe not to all women, but to so many women, birth is so much more than whether your baby is alive and well. And that is why there is so much bypass trauma, because these women don't feel like it's valid to say, I had a traumatic experience, because on paper, it shouldn't be classed as traumatic. Like, it's just really sad.
It is. And I think comparative suffering.
Yes.
I did a post about this recently, but comparative suffering is completely appropriate in many aspects of the world. I don't think that comparative suffering belongs in the birth world. And having said that, is your experience is not less than or more than compared to somebody else's. And if I said to you, hey, Laura, how was your birth experience? And you're like, oh, like it wasn't great, but other people have it worse. No. I'm going to sit you down and we're going to have coffee and croissants and have a real big chat, because how somebody else experienced their birth is completely irrelevant to how you experience your own, because you are a different person to them. And I get really sad when every kind of birth discussion starts with some form of comparative suffering of like, oh, well, I had a really shit experience and I have a 4th degree tear, but my friend can't have babies. Or it's not relevant. Yes, it's part of your reality and it's part of your context, but that doesn't invalidate your experience. And similarly, the woman that messaged you saying she had on paper, I do this a lot, don't I? She had an on paper traumatic birth experience, but doesn't have any trauma. That's me.
Yeah.
I was induced at 9:30. I had my membranes ruptured and I had the syntocin put up. My daughter was delivered at 1:10.
Wow.
So that's not even 4 hours. I had an episiotomy with local anesthetic, forceps without pain relief, because there wasn't time to give me any systemic pain relief. And my obstetrician said to me, the only way your daughter could have made that more difficult was if she came out wearing a ball gown. So on paper, like they smashed the button on the wall and like 14,000 people rushed in. So on paper, I have a very involved birth experience. I carry no trauma, nor have I ever carried trauma, to the point that when my obstetrician was visiting me on the ward and she said, I'm so sorry about that, was so traumatic. And she said it a number of times over the first 2 or 3 days. And I actually said, please stop saying that it was traumatic. I don't have trauma, but every time you say it, I think that I should. And not everyone's going to be in the position or the clarity of mind or whatever to think to say that. But that was really important for me, because whenever she came in and said, I'm sorry, that was so traumatic, I was like, but it wasn't. Was it arduous? Yes. Was it ridiculous and fast? And did I predict that was going to happen? Absolutely not. Couldn't have predicted that if you told me. Do I have trauma? No.
I know. And I think the same goes for, don't just assume because someone has a home birth with fairy lights and aromatherapy that they don't have trauma, because a lot of women still do. Maybe they didn't feel listened to or supported properly. And I think trauma is in the eye of the beholder, isn't it? So
absolutely,
you can't assume anything about.
No.
The best question you can ask someone is, how do you feel about your birth?
How was your birth?
Assuming something about their experience. So
absolutely, and it's that open-ended question that's so important.
So Eleanor, do you find that most women come to you because they have recognized that they have had an experience they need to debrief on or work through? Or do you find that some women maybe come to you for birth prep, VBAC prep, whatever it is, and then discover, oh, actually, I'm actually holding on to some trauma I didn't realize I had? Like, is there people that weren't aware of it, that it kind of comes out once they start discussing births?
It's definitely the latter.
I
I don't think that I've actually had someone who off their own, like they haven't reached out to me to say, I have birth trauma, I need to debrief it.
I thought it would be the
It's
opposite. That's interesting.
no, it's not. I don't actually get a whole lot of kind of cold calls of I need to do a birth debrief. It's I'll have physio clients who I'm talking to in their initial, and I ask them, like, how was your birth? Because I need to know physiologically. And then I say to them, have you ever done a debrief? Have you ever talked to someone about this birth experience? Or I talk about it on Instagram, and I'll do a series of posts, or I'll do a story. And then I get people sending me messages saying, I never really thought about the fact that I actually have birth trauma. Do you can I talk to you about it? I've had people refer family members. I've had people that follow me tell their sister-in-law to contact me because they know that they have birth trauma, or they know that they are still mulling or processing or holding on to things, and they say, oh, hey, like, I think you would benefit from this. I have people contacting me on behalf of friends and family saying, I think that my cousin really needs to talk to you about this. Like, is there anything I can send her? Like, what's your best contact details? And then, I have birth clients who will be doing our birth education, or will, in some of the antenatal sessions, we'll be talking, and they go, I never really realized that I'm actually holding on to a lot of grief from my previous experience. So unfortunately, not a lot of it is that active realization. It's usually a secondary from a different catalyst.
And that's been my experience as well. Like, I probably wouldn't say I had birth trauma. Maybe that's me invalidating my own experience, but I didn't realize until I worked through my third pregnancy and birth journey, I had very positive cesarean section experiences, but I had a lot of beliefs that weren't serving me anymore, and probably very negative beliefs around birth and my ability to birth and my body and things like that, which I had no idea about until I went on this VBAC journey. And so I thought that was really interesting for me, because I had such, I don't want to say fond memory, because it was a pretty intense thing, but a very positive surgical birth given the circumstances, right? The time felt great, didn't feel like I had anything to work through, but it wasn't until years down the track when something else popped up that then triggered, oh, hang on, am I actually telling myself that then this happened? So I guess I'm just saying that to remind women that if you feel great after birth, which is amazing, I think that's fantastic, it doesn't mean it won't pop up down the track potentially. We are so good at suppressing emotions, and my understanding is trauma is essentially just feelings and situations that we haven't been able to fully integrate or haven't been able to fully embody. And so they can pop up at any stage in life, but we can always work through them. They're not a block that is I'm done, I'm broken. If you get the right support around you, you can definitely work through whatever it is that you're feeling.
Absolutely.
It's really important to.
And a lot of women may not know, acknowledge, recognize that they have birth trauma until they're pregnant with subsequent children. And then they're forced to face the reality of giving birth again, and they go, oh, actually, no, I didn't like doing that last time. And it's not until they've got a reason to address birth that they then kind of go, oh, okay, I'm not as okay about this as I thought I was. This is actually a big deal for me.
What would you recommend for someone like that who maybe is not quite yet ready to go see someone about that? Is there any sort of talking points, reflection points, journaling points, something you would maybe recommend they could sit with themselves and have a think about? Or would you always say, just go see a professional first?
I think not a lot of women know that you don't have to go straight to a psychologist. That's the first thing. If I say to someone, oh, have you spoken to anybody? Have you debriefed your birth? They're like, oh, no, I don't feel like I need to see a psychologist about this. But it doesn't have to be that great leap. It could just be finding someone who you are comfortable being open and honest with. And I think a lot of the time, the women that do know that they've had a negative experience or a traumatic experience, they don't want to talk to family or friends, because they don't feel like they can be open with that conversation without negatively impacting the person that's listening. So they go, oh, yeah, I really want to talk to my mum about it, but I don't want to upset her. Or sister, cousin, friend, it's the same thing. And they acknowledge that they do want to talk to somebody, or it might be beneficial, but they don't know who to talk to. So I think acknowledging that a lot of doulas or birth workers or people within the birth space, even some midwives, they do offer birth debriefing. That's one of the big things, is if you don't have someone in your life that you're comfortable chatting to, there's another option before you even have to go towards psychologists. I mean, there's counselors out there as well. There's also perinatal psychologists. There are psychologists that specialize in the perinatal, antenatal, postpartum, that specifically work only with parents. So it's not just the psychologist that deals with everything, it's their special interest. But if you are someone that does feel like you can start working through it yourself, I think journaling, even just writing down your recollection of your birth story, that'll allow you to potentially see where you've blocked things, or you skim things, or the things that you find hard to talk about. And then I think breaking it down in that respect, and then identifying where your core feeling is. Like, is the core feeling anger? Is it shame? Is it grief? Is it guilt? Is it, like, try and find the one or two core emotions that resonate within that big experience. But I think ultimately we as humans do better with someone else when we're discussing these things, because validation doesn't often come easily from within. And we're not very good at going, oh, that's okay, or your experience was valid. We seek that from others. So it's definitely, like, acknowledging it is amazing. That's a really big first leap. But then I think, journaling and pulling it apart and seeing where you feel around that, and then seeking someone to sit down and talk to. And I understand, like, there are some people in my life that I wouldn't talk to about my birth experience in detail, because I know that they would be affected by it more than others. So then it is just reaching out, and if there's a doula that's local to you and there's nothing explicit about them doing birth debriefs, just message them and say, do you offer birth debriefs? And if they don't, they'll know someone who does. And just make that first message.
Are you aware of online resources that you really like when it comes to birth trauma, that women might be able to go and Google and find some more resources themselves if they're not quite ready to have a conversation?
PANDA's really good. So the online resource with PANDA, that's really good, especially just thinking about perinatal anxiety and depression. I think a lot of other ways is just looking for local support groups, or local mums and bubs groups, or linking in with women that have had babies at a similar time, or talking to your friends who have had babies and just asking them their experiences, because you can kind of get a little bit of validation by proxy in those ways. But there's no specific platform that I've looked into yet. I need to do more research about what's available. But yeah, PANDA is always a really, really good place to start.
I'm just quickly Googling as we talk, because for some reason Birth Trauma Association is popping up.
Is there one?
Yeah. So there is an Australian Birth Trauma Association.
I thought there was.
Australasian Birth Trauma Association. So they've got a blog and a whole heap of downloadable guides, and it looks like they've got a guide as well on how to find the right professional. So I just did a quick Google of that.
No, that's really good, because I back of my brain, I'm definitely aware that there are support measures in place, but I wouldn't have been able to tell you without Googling it myself.
Yeah, I'm just thinking for the women that is just not quite ready to chat about it, even to the closest friends or family who might just want to do more of like background looking into thinking about it. So that's awesome. Thank you so much, Eleanor. I know that's going to be really, really valuable to those women, particularly those who maybe never thought that this was a category that they would be lumped in, and I probably would say myself included. I wouldn't have put myself in that category, but I have come to acknowledge. But yeah, some of my own traumas that I needed to work through, and that's fine. There's no shame.
No,
There's a
not at
problem
all.
with that, and you can still have, like, I still would say I had a very positive experience, but there were moments, those pressure points you talk about, where I felt really uncomfortable, or I felt really like disassociated from my body and my experience. And it's really important. I know I had to work through that to be able to have my most recent birth experience, because they were blocking me. So I just think that's really important to know. So thank you so much. This conversation has been epic. I know there's going to be so much value in it, and I appreciate your time so much. With both mums.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. So I will put in the show notes and whatnot where everyone can find you. But yes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. And I'll talk to you, however many more times over the next few years as we need to.
Absolutely. Hello, mamas. I really hope that for anyone that was feeling funny about their birth, or sad or confused or unsure, that episode has really helped you, I guess, get started in the right direction of knowing that it's okay to not feel that birth went to plan or that birth was amazing. That's okay. And it's okay to feel anything really about your birth, positive or negative. Like Eleanor shared, she actually had a really great experience, but on paper it looked traumatic. So a lot of people were telling her that she should feel worse about it. So I guess it's just about validating however you feel about birth is okay. So I really hope that you got a lot out of that episode. I really hope that it helped validate your experience, and please do follow up, like I said, with a family, friend, with your midwife, with your doula, with PANDA, with your GP, with the local psychologist, whoever it needs to be. Please do debrief, please do talk, please do reach out for support. Jump in my inbox at Physio Laura if you need to chat more. I can help point you in the right direction. You are never alone. Your experience is so valid. Your feelings are so valid, and nobody knows what you went through except for you. It doesn't matter how it looks on paper. It's about how you feel, okay? And like Eleanor said, I think the most important thing we can ask women is, how do you feel about your birth? Rather than assuming just because you had this on paper, you should feel, yay or nay. Just asking someone, how do you feel about it? And just letting them speak. I think that's really important. So thank you so much for being here. This Own Your Birth series has been so incredible, and getting fantastic feedback. If you haven't already, go and check out the first 3 episodes. We chat about transferring to the hospital well. We talk about birthing positions, and we talk about how to make inductions and C-sections as epic as possible. So please go check that out. Make sure you subscribe to the Pregnancy with Physio Laura podcast, because we have so many amazing series coming up, and I don't want you to miss out. And if you would like some continued support throughout your pregnancy, physically and mentally, come and join the Pregnancy Posse. That is my online membership program. You can ask me all of your burning questions. There is a whole library of workouts, resources, pelvic floor information, how to manage pelvic girdle pain, so much. I know you're going to love it. You can find out more information at thepregnancyposse.com, and you can trial it for 7 days. Otherwise, mamas, wherever you are, please, I hope you're being kind to yourself, compassionate towards yourself, and asking for help if you need it. I love you. Bye.